Okay, session 5. Dreadful. Just, well, make something nice that a princess might want to eat. The goblin blinked slowly at him. The kitchens were terribly dim, lit mostly by the enormous fires roaring in the hearth. He wasn't sure if it was a mercy. The firelight outlined a face that seemed to be composed mostly of nose, with two tiny black eyes shining like beetles from the greenish folds of the face. The little valet had looked almost cute in comparison to this one. He wasn't even sure the gender of the creature staring up at him. "And that you would want to eat, master?" It had taken him less time to find the kitchen than he'd feared. There just wasn't that much castle, and it turned out the kitchen occupied a large chunk of it. Everyone scurried out of his way when they saw him coming, rather than asking if he were lost in his own house, because that would be ridiculous. He blew out a breath, struggling not to sound frustrated. Yes, something that both the princess and I might want to eat. It continued to blink at him. A female, perhaps. The sack-like dress covered most of its or her upper body, and some of her fellows seemed to be wearing loincloths alone. The dress did not seem to have been washed in a long time, however, if ever. He couldn't bear it. It was horribly out of character, he knew, but he also knew he'd be picturing the filthy rags the entire time he was trying to eat. "And I don't suppose you might have something cleaner to wear? An apron, perhaps, even?" Slowly her little eyes widened. "An apron? Or not?" he said, backing away like the coward he was afraid he might be. He had no idea why the mention of an apron might bring on some emotional upheaval, but it was more than he had bargained for. "Whatever you'd like, really. Just make sure dinner is nice. Please. I command." He fled back upstairs. He shouldn't let the goblins unnerve him, he knew. He had chosen them for his primary staff, so they must be competent enough. Or maybe not. Maybe they were just less likely to poison him than human cooks would be. He was starting to regret the entire idea. Serico stood waiting for him at the top of the stairs, and he nearly groaned aloud. "I brought the princess a dress that we had in the stores," the steward reported. "A little moth-eaten near the bottom, but I think it should do nicely." Gav wondered if he should have looked himself. He feared what Serico might think would do nicely. But since he had no idea where the stores were exactly, he had had to delegate. "If I may be so bold, my lord." Gav closed his eyes and wished for patience. "What is it, Serico?" "Perhaps tonight is not the best night?" Serico's eyes flickered everywhere. The ceiling, the floors, the corners, everywhere but Gav. "It's just—" "Spit it out, Serico." He put a little growl into his tone. The steward shrank into himself. "You're not always in the best of moods after your calls with Lord Zarkonar. You're not always in the best of moods after your calls with Lord Zarkonar." Gav froze. Serico continued on more rapidly. "And you said after the last one that you wanted me to remind you not to schedule anything after one, since you didn't have that many crystals available to shatter." He tried to still his racing heart. Who was Zarkonar? And why was the name alone enough to make his mouth dry up? "Serico, remind me," he said slowly. "I appear to have lost track of the time. How long do I have before this call?" Serico consulted a small sand timer around his neck. It had to be enchanted. There was no way it could have been accurate otherwise, bumping his belly like that. "About 15 minutes, lord." "I see." He forced a confident smile. "Well then, I have plenty of time to get set up, don't I?" He walked up the stairs to his workshop, numbly, trying to figure out how to hide his missing memories from someone who apparently scared him all the way through his amnesia. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. All right, we'll do a 5-minute here, and then we'll see you again in a few